It's time for probing messages from other dimensions. Penetrating suckers, aliens. Have you ever felt like this is right? Have you ever had the TPG just come and arrest you with John and Predator?
Welcome to the Psychic Guys. Tonight we're joined by special guest James Anderson. James is a playwright and concerning comedian, whatever that is, a mystic, a mystery, the man himself. Tonight we're going to explore relationships with the dead, how these are framed in pop culture and how we can do better. We'll also hear some real-life stories of haunting and how our perspective can make all the difference to our experience. That is, if Alternative Dave ever shows up. Welcome, James. So I think you wanted to kick this off about ghost hunting TV shows, right?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Happy to be here. To give a bit of perspective where I'm coming from this is, I'm a Gnostic, basically, would be my worldview, for lack of a better phraseology. And I used to work at the Vault of Southbridge in Edinburgh. And it's one of the most haunted places in the world. Just to give you a bit of backstory about them, in Edinburgh, it's mostly hills, and the bridge just connects one hill to the other. So there's not any water. It's just to connect this. And they had the great idea to put rooms in the bridge. At the time that they built it, it was basically just for storage and for places to work, as they were building the tenements that were going to go next to it. But what they forgot to do was to water seal it. And it's Scotland, so it rains quite a lot. So all the water would flood it in. Basically, everyone left that had any money. Their merchants were getting all their goods were getting moldy and things like that, so they left out, and so the poor started to move in, and they lived there for it could be 20 years, it could be 60 years. The historical records are not great on it, but basically, during that time, this was when Burke and Hare were around, so there was lots of grave robbings, there was murders. You're going to get where there's vulnerable people, bad things are going to happen, effectively. And they were basically forgotten about for a good chunk of time, and then they were kind of rediscovered in the 80s. And it was very much a mum and dad operation to fill them out. So people were just knocking down walls and then finding that they had this entire skate rink behind their bedroom wall that they didn't know about and stuff like that. And when they got opened up, all these haunting stories started to turn up. And over time, they got this reputation where there was lots of hauntings. And then sort of, Most Haunted turned up there, and Ghost Hunters and everything like that. So I got a job there as a tour guide, as, doing ghost tours. And
oh, cool. Did you wear a funky old-fashioned outfit?
Yeah, I did actually.
Ring the bell and all that.
I did actually see. I was just wanting to jog my memory about the Vault of Southbridge today, and I saw on the Irish Mirror website this article from 2015 when I was working there, and it's two girls have spotted a ghost behind them, and I was looking at the picture and I was like, that's me, that is definitely me. I can just tell that's my boots that I used to wear then, and the way I'm standing and the shape of it is you saw me, there's no ghost there. But yeah, so it's wear this long black gothy jacket and stuff, and it's when there's a job that you're so good at, but it's depressing when you leave it, because you'll know you'll never be as good at a job as you are at that. To my knowledge, I am the only person that ever had someone shit themselves on the tour while we was there.
How did you manage that?
And it was just a good jump scare. Just a classic good jump scare, and they fainted. They fell over, and then they looked me dead in the eyes, and they said, "I made a diarrhea." And that was me. I got a bonus that year. It's just this guy can make people shit themselves. So anyway, yeah. I was working
Did that
there.
end up in the papers as well?
No, unfortunately, no. I should do. Yeah, I'll write back into the mirror and be like, by the way, here's a tale for you. So yeah, like, so I was working there, and at the time, I was more than a skeptic. I would basically completely have been like someone that didn't believe in ghosts or anything like that. And the experience working there was one of the things that set me on the path where I am now, where you have these encounters that kind of send you in a different direction where, you know, it's like when you're doing magic or something like that, at first you're just doing it to test it out. You're like, if I do the sigil, what's going to happen? And you don't need to believe. You're just doing it because, you know, you're applying some sort of like pastiche of the scientific method to what's happening. But then over time, enough synchronicities and coincidences build up where it's hard to believe anything opposite. And it's not like you can just pick up a one piece of proof and go, that proves it. But
yeah, it's the big picture, isn't it? I was exactly the same with remote viewing, because when I tried that, I expected it not to work. And I was just like being empirical. And then like it was just like scribbles on a Post-it note. You know, I don't know what I was doing. And I pretty much drew the picture that was there. And I was like, whoa, not the result I wanted there. But it took me ages to really change my worldview and change my opinion on it. You know, as you say, it was like the whole sum total of it. Like, there's no way this is chance, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And when I was working there, the sense that I got very early on was the only way that I could kind of phrase it is there was like the sense of it was like pregnant with possibility. And it was like very close to your
under
face.
The bridge here.
Yeah. So you're in these vaults that are, and I mean, the thing is, there's lots and lots of, you know, you could come up with hundreds and hundreds of like reasonable like ways that it could be. You know, there's people walking up above you. There's cars. There's going to be buses. There's generators. There's things like that. But that was like the sense that you kind of got. And the first night I was there, I felt very different. It felt like nothing I'd ever felt before. It's really a kind of like outer body experience while I was, you know, lucid. And admittedly, I had been drinking. The middle of the Fringe song was like delirious with, you know, working through that and, you know, just tired and things like that. But I kind of went home and I just dreamt about it all night, you know, just kind of walking around it. And ever since then, there have never been far from my like consciousness. They kind of like took on this almost like Jungian aspect of my own subconscious, and I dream about them all the time. And I hadn't been back in 10 years, you know, like I didn't set foot in them, but there was just something about them that really has really stuck with me.
So was there a particular experience, or was it just a feeling? Or
it was
it
more
sounds like
like
this is ground zero for you, right?
Yeah, it's like it was a vibes-based economy where there was lots of things that did happen, but again, like, you know, I was working. We were all a bunch of masters as well, so you would purposely go out of your way to wind people up and things like that. But they would basically like one of the things that I never ever got down to as an explanation was, you know, because, you know, I'm a writer, I would be like testing out short stories effectively on these things. So I'd be like, right, here's an idea for a story I want to do. So I would kind of like sit down and write it and I would get it in, and then I would kind of just like frame it, and that's the reference that would start happening there. And then weirdly what would start happening is you'd hear in other people's tours that was happening. Like, you would just make something up about, like, you know, there was someone getting her, like the scene in The Haunting, where she's like, oh, you're holding my hand too tight. And then when the lights come on, there's no one there. So, like, that's one of the things that I sort of, like, I was like, well, I'll write that into a story and I'll have that happening. And then that was it. Like,
so random members of the public were having paranormal experiences, which you were writing.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there was things like to test it out, I was like, all right, I'll just write a story where some money turns up then. And then there was one time where out of one of the vaults, just this money flicked out of nowhere. And I was like, that is probably Darren or something like that messing me around. But you cannot believe how much that put the Scooby up. You're like, that's just like really, like the timing of it. Like if someone like had gone in to do it, they would have just had to have been sitting there for like 20 minutes going, oh, this is going to be a great joke. Which is, it's possible. It's not beyond the realms of possibility.
Did you read the story to your colleagues before? Like, were they known to do that?
It was just, there were things that I did on the tour. I would just be telling these stories and then you'd start hearing about it happening in the vaults. As if, whatever was there was like, all right, he's good. Actually, that's a good idea. We're going to start picking that up. So yeah, I'd been working there for a while. And one day I came in for work and it was like, ironically, it was like dead. It just felt like there was nothing there. It was really stark. I was like, that just feels like some rooms underground. I've never felt this is like such a day and night sort of scenario. So I was going around doing my tours that day. I was really distracted. I just didn't feel like, this place that I'd kind of got used to. And then when I was like getting ready to close my shift, my boss was like, oh, there's some ghost hunters coming in. If you want to just get them settled in, just do them a quick tour. Just show them a couple of places, like show them where the kettle is and things like that. And then off you go. So I brought them in. I was kind of doing it. They weren't interested. They kind of just wanted to get on and do their own thing. And I was like, right, that's kind of interesting. Okay, well, yeah. I didn't think too much about it. And then a little while, things kind of go back to normal. There's that really oppressive feeling in your face, stuff happening. Like you get stories coming out, people saying that they're seeing things, hearing things, blah, blah, blah. And then, like a month or two later, I can come back in again and that same feeling is there. I'm like, this is empty. What's happened? So like in my lunch break, I went down to the lad that's working on the admin that day. And I'm like, is there any ghost hunters in today? He was like, yeah, everyone knows that. It's really weird. Everyone just seems to know when there's ghost hunters in. And I was like, right, that is interesting.
Wow. And so the ghosts were hiding from the ghost hunters? Or
yeah, exactly. I think that's what it was. That's like, even indeed that there were ghosts. You know what I mean?
Well, the phenomenon, whatever it was.
Yeah, exactly. The phenomenon is a good way to put it. And so...
why should it do that?
This is the indication that I got. The impression that I had was that doing ghost hunting in that style is kind of the inverse of what you should be doing. It's kind of got things the wrong way around because you're basically inviting something to come to you and you're kind of forcing them into this realm to take shape in a way that's pleasing to you. And they don't want to do that. That's not something that they're interested in. To an extent, I think that they are, where it's like, this is the metaphor that I kind of came up with, where it's like, imagine you had a friend who's like, my gaff is the best place on earth. Like, you got to come around. Like, you got to come here. And every time you're hanging out, he's like, no, we got to go back to my gaff. You got to go back to my gaff. And you get there, and he's just got warm, like tiny French Tesco beers to serve you. Like the place is messy. It's just like there's cat hair. You're like, oh God. And you're like, no, the thing is with my house though, I have the finest cognac. I have quail's eggs to show you. I've got the best things. Do you want to come to my house? And no, you got to come to my house. You always have to come to my house. And that I think is like the best way to put it into this metaphor of like, there's two worlds and then there's just like this thin like wall between them, and it's okay to sort of invite things over here to some extent, but that's not where they live and that's not where their shape is meant to be, and you're meant to go there to get this information, and that's where you're going to get the accurate details, if you know what I mean. So the other guy, and this is like something that Duncan Barford kind of put into words for me in his podcast, call experiments in the home. And it really just like clicked to me. I kind of got it. He was kind of saying like, the thing is with like ghost hunters, what they're doing is that they're effectively doing magic. There's no different, because it's not really the scientific method, like, because they don't follow it. And then in my worldview, you know, it's like someone like Kingsley would say, it's that the scientific method is already a parody. It's already a pastiche of a different method of logic that is like divine in its origins.
Just testing any kind of woo-woo and expecting it to be like a repeatable experiment, though, isn't going to work, is it? You know, because it just never plays by those rules. But I think it is valid to say, if you have a whole bunch of anecdotal experience, it's valid to look at that and say, here's a phenomenon, let's try and understand it. You know, like we can study the clouds. We don't have an experiment where you're like, well, if I do this, we get this kind of cloud. You just have to watch them go by and take notes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think investigating the paranormal is the same thing. You can't turn up and I don't know what gadgets and gizmos the ghost hunters have, but, you know, I can see what you mean, that it's like demanding, right, ghosts, you come and make my app bleep or show up on my camera or something, is kind of like going shouting at the sky and telling the clouds to fulfill your experimental design. Yeah,
old man yells at clouds.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you think about, like, say, the way that you'd set up a ceremonial magic event, you know, you kind of get your table, and then you get your dagger, and you get your wand, and you get, you know, your flames, and the blood of the virgins, and you set up the space, and you designate it, as in, like, I am inviting something here. And then you start going through this process that then, you know, things are meant to turn off. So if you're doing like a goetic work, you know, you've got their seal and you start saying their names and stuff like that. And that's kind of...
That's a little bit different though, isn't it? Because it's quite coercive. So you're not being like, oh yeah, come along if you want. It's like, by all the holy names, you'll damn well show up in my triangle and then I'll bully you until you do what I say.
But that's kind of one of my points, I think, is that the way the ghost hunters, and there's a couple of things here that, you know, like, I don't want to paint everyone with the same brushes and stuff. And there's probably people that are very careful and are much more thoughtful. But I think the stuff that you kind of see on TV and the stuff that you see on YouTube is very salacious, and it's the way that it represents what's happening. And they're very much like, if there's something here, you know, do this. I want you to do this. And you're kind of like forcing it down this channel or whatever there is to, you know, start flicking the switch of a torch or something like that. You know, that's one of the things they do.
Or knock on the table or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly like that. So you're kind of like, you are commanding it. You're saying, like, do this. And it's like, you know, like my experience from, you know, sort of working in the other world, and I think that a lot of people don't do, is your first move should be like, how are you? The same way that you would treat anything or anyone, you know, like your conversation is, all right, how are you getting on? In goetic work, are you meant to command things for it? It's just like, because that's what their job is to fulfill this part within their hierarchy of like the divine, effectively, would be the way that it's framed in its original, like, you know, in the grimoires and things. But is that appropriate then for the human dead? You know what I mean? Like, you know, there are people that have existed, they're part of us in some emanation, and you're basically like, make this light go on and off.
Yeah. Well, just to play devil's advocate, seems appropriate, right? In that idea of the spiritual hierarchy, that you've got like angels and, you know, God at the top, and then the angels, and then I think you get humans, don't you? And then the demons are there to do our bidding. And like, we're part of the hierarchy. So assuming for a moment that the human dead still count as human, actually, you could perhaps use the same mechanics. Like if you turned up in that under the bridge where you used to work and did a goetic style evocation where you're using the names of God and angels and whatever to command them, and you get the right ones, maybe you can make them turn up and do stuff.
Yeah.
within your triangle of the heart, right? Whereas before, nobody did that. Nobody used the right formula. So the phenomena just runs away because it doesn't want to play with the ghost hunters. Maybe what they need is a magic wand and robes and
Yeah, exactly.
whatever.
But I think, like, within this stuff as well, it's very difficult because you're constantly bumping up against the idea that you're a fucking idiot and you've gone completely insane.
You got to watch that.
Yeah, and if you don't have that, then that's how you know that you've gone off the deep end.
You got to be skeptical of everything, really.
Yeah, exactly,
including you, especially yourself.
Yeah. But the other thing you can't really do is deny other people's experiences. And it's very, very easy to do because when things don't fit into your worldview, it's very easy to dismiss them. But we're all working at these kind of like cross purposes. And so like you might think that someone, what their story that they're telling is absolutely bollocks, but you don't believe a word of it. But, you have to believe that they believe that experience happened to them.
Yeah. It's subjectively real to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of found with a lot of the ghost hunters as well. And again, this is like, painting with broad brushstrokes and kind of just getting to like where I kind of see some of the problems are. But, you get a lot of people that are very interested in the supernatural, but from this, most haunted kind of point of view. And if things didn't fit into their concept of what a ghost could and couldn't do and would do and things like that, they would be the people in the tour that would just go, no, a ghost can't do that.
That's not a ghost. Obviously, what you've got there is an alien.
Yeah.
What's that much? It's not a ghost, idiot.
But it wouldn't even go that far. They would just be like, no, that didn't happen. Because that doesn't fit within,
it's amazing, isn't it? It's like the like Randy's prize, that people want to debunk weird paranormal things that happen by going, well, I've made up this story about what this phenomenon is like, and you have to fulfill it exactly how I have made up the story. Otherwise, the whole thing is made up. And it's actually kind of like your ghosts running away from the ghost hunters. They're coming and going, well, I made up the story about how I expect to detect you with my RF meter or my thermometer or my infrared camera or something. And unless you do, you're not here.
Yeah.
And as it happens, they weren't there at all because they buggered off. But...
Yeah. Like there's, I have this friend that has this like very intricate, very long story about a haunting somewhere that they lived with a couple of housemates, and it's for me, it very much like breaks the boundaries of what I think would possible. But one day she was kind of telling it, and I got to the end and I was like, but how do you know that it wasn't, say, like the she, or it wasn't like a demon? And then she got really upset because in her kind of worldview, like by saying that, it dismissed the entire process. And it was kind of hard to explain to her. It was like, well, the thing is though, I believe that a demon exists more than a ghost. You have to believe that's not. I believe that fairies exist more than ghosts exist. That's the...
This is a tricky bit of territory, isn't it? Within the not invalidating people's experiences, but when people are not reflexive about the subjective nature of these experiences, which I think happens a lot with like alien abduction and people, like those are a cultural trope. People have a paranormal experience and subjectively see like a grey alien or any number of other weird things. I'm not picking on grey aliens, but then they take that to be the literal truth of it. And because it fulfills that image that they got or that trope, they're like, well, it's that. And I can point to this other thing and say, this was what my experience was. And I think it's more like something weird happened and your mind had to translate it into imagery and feelings and meaning that's kind of already within you. Like the paranormal experiences are a reflection of the person having the experience as much as they are a standalone thing. Yeah. And then people report that, they're like, no, this is exactly what happened. And it's like, no, that was exactly what you experienced. But like half of your story is actually about what's inside your subconscious. It's not about the nature of that experience. And then So it's not invalidating somebody's experience then, is it? To say, yeah, I get that you have this experience, but maybe you should zoom out and look at the very nature of these sorts of experiences as not literally true.
Yeah.
Or is that not okay? Because it sounds like that's what you did with your friend.
Yeah.
And it failed terribly. So.
Well, yeah, but I think it's just like they didn't understand that my cultural framework, that I would exist in, where, I'm surrounded by these Neolithic tombs in my,
cool.
where I live. And so I can just walk up to them, and that's where, they were sheer meant to exist. So that for me, I'm pushed up right against them, you know what I mean? And so I got to go pay my dues. I got to do what they want me to do because, it's like living with a toddler. They'll just get really annoyed because you haven't done something in a very specific way. And they're like, no, that way, not the way, something like that. And, maybe it's a translation issue or whatever it is. But yeah, that's my world. So, I work with them. And so to me, they're as real as what a ghost would be, or more real, because, I push up against them. But, if you don't have that sort of framework, then it just sounds like you're just like demons and fairies and things like that are stupid. They're
and if
silly,
you say
you know what I mean?
demon to several different people, they all have a different idea.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
some people might come at it from a religious point of view, and it's like demons are real, but those are bad, and they're just the bad things.
Yeah.
Or demons are silly, or demons are only egoic, or demons are evil, or I'm a massive edgelord and demons are my besties, or whatever. But it's the same word, and we mistake our own model for the reality of it and forget that even the language is so subjective, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, I think what I'm kind of driving at, which is the perception that I see is that I don't think ghost hunters are mean-spirited, a lot of them anyway, and they're not necessarily doing the wrong thing. I just feel that what they're trying to do is make up for a lack that isn't lacking. They're trying to have this relationship with the dead that anyone can have and everyone does have, because it's an integral part of the human experience. And I think it's just that the way that we've, Christianity specifically is kind of distanced us from the dead further and further, where there's kind of only very specific kinds of dead, and they're in heaven, hell, or purgatory, or there's no purgatory now. And then they didn't explain what happened. They were just the Pope just got up one day. It was there's no purgatory now. It's well, I'm told the people in purgatory.
Cancelled. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I was all right, okay. So,
I didn't know.
Did they go down?
Yeah. Wow.
So it's kind of just the further that we've pushed this away in society, I think it's setting us up to fail in our spiritual life. You know what I mean? Where it's you already have a relationship with the dead all the time. And that's kind of one of the most important things you will be doing in your life. The way that Jung put it was that your job in life is to answer the questions that your dead left you. And that's kind of nebulous about is it your family that left you it? Or is it your community or society or something like that? But you've got to find out what the answer is, and it's going to be different for every person. And that's what your task is. And I can't tell you what it's going to be because you're just going to ape minds, but this is what, your relationship with the dead is going to be. We're not doing that. And I think that's where I kind of see a lot of, sickness in society, the way that we process grief, the way that we, deal with death is it's so distant. We try and distance ourselves so far from it.
The West is terrible at death, isn't it? Do you blame reductionist materialism? Because I do.
To a large extent, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's half an hour, job done. Thanks for coming and joining me. That's
But it's I think with people in this space, they throw the baby out with the bathwater, and I kind of just like, no, it's that's all bad. I'm like, no, it's very good at doing certain things. It's very good at, say, like making drugs, like because that's within the corporeal realm, and that's what it's working in.
Materialism is great for matter.
Yeah, exactly. But it's so bad.
But again, we're mistaking the model for reality, just like people who have different ideas about their experiences. We were taking the model of materialism to explain everything and going, well, look, there's no ghosts in here. Yeah. So they're not real. Well, it's exactly. It's just a model that explains how stuff works.
Like, English is great for doing business in, but if you want to talk about the weather, you use Irish because it's so much more expressive and things like that. And so it really shows you just like, you know, these things are subjective, and you're not trying to like jam them into the corporeal world. And I think, again, if you go back to the ghost hunting thing, that's where they're going wrong, where it's like, there are people that have done like 300, 400 hours of TV, and it's like where they are at the beginning of the show is where they are at the end of the show after 300 hours. Like, their views haven't changed, their tricks haven't changed, their concept of the world has not altered in that time. It's exactly the same. And so that would suggest to you that your world model is, it's gone wrong to some extent, especially if you're still as scared by this stuff as you were at the beginning, because like so much of it is just like, it's like ringing the doorbell.
Isn't that a lot of the entertainment?
Away.
Yeah. Isn't that the entertainment value though, is seeing close-ups of people's face with like the snot coming out as they're shaking and screaming in the dark, like the Blair Witch Project. I never actually watched that film. Is there even a witch, or is it just people running around in the woods being frightened? It seems like that's why these things are fun to watch, isn't it?
That's the there you go. That would be the complex answer to the Blair Witch Project, because how did you find would the presence of a witch be on film? You know what I mean? Like there is no like physical witch that turns up and goes, "All right, I'm the Blair Witch Project," and you turn and you go, "Hey, that's the witch from the Blair Witch Project." That's the banshee from the Banshee of Inisherin. But yeah.
All right. So is the Blair Witch Project actually about the shadow and how we're unwilling to face ourselves?
I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but I mean, it's good. You should watch it, man. It's like, it's got proper, like,
I just remember the running around in the woods.
Yeah.
It looked really scary, and it was like, and then I just never got around to it.
Yeah. But yeah. Like kind of where we are with
Sorry, I derailed that totally.
But yeah, it's kind of just like that's what they're doing. Is like they're going up to like the ghosts, and then they're ringing the doorbell, and then they're like, "All right, what's going on?" They're like, and then run away. Like, maybe just stick around and find out what this guy's trying to tell you something. Yeah.
I mean, have you ever heard a story of somebody being killed by a ghost?
Yeah, exactly.
While filming a ghost hunting show.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I mean, what do they think's going to happen?
Yeah. You do hear about...
I mean, what is the fear, actually? That's an interesting avenue. What is it they're scared of?
Oh, man, I have no idea. No idea whatsoever. Because it's like, to me, like, I'd love to see a ghost. It would just be... It would
I never see shit like this. Yeah. I've never seen a UFO, never seen a ghost, never seen a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
I mean, plenty of mystical, spiritual experience, but I did all that on purpose, I've never just been, and I go out walking in the woods in summer, I walk barefoot, so I'm out there with I have the dog, to be fair, but it's like nighttime, I got no flashlight, no phone, no shoes, nothing, and I'm like, come on, perfect time, I'm the only person in the forest, come do something cool.
Yeah.
And it won't. When you do that, it won't.
Yeah.
Only what I need to do is forget about it and go fishing.
Yeah.
Then it'll come get me.
But I mean, like my friend Owen kind of says it's like the wizard eye, your third eye and things like that, and it's like, I really do think that like things turn up and you'll see them there and it's like, they're not really there, but that's almost more real. Like a dream is almost more real than anything that you can experience during the day and stuff. Like,
but people do have experiences which they experience as seeing stuff with their physical eyes.
Yeah.
That seems real on a kind of five sensory basis, and that's what I'm talking about as stuff I've never had, because like the wizard eye, the third eye, the whatever, the perception of that space, it's full of stuff. You look at it all day
Yeah.
But I kind of want to get like a Bigfoot tail nailed above my front door, or
Right. Yeah.
get a taxidermied alien in your living room just as a conversation starter.
But this is the thing I kind of don't understand about, say, like Bigfoot hunters, is like, surely if Bigfoot was something that you were interested in, or Nessie or whatever, like, you would just want to ignore them, because if you found it, you would doom that entity to the worst, like a fate worse than death. Because if you,
I don't think that's ever put off hunters before, has it? Animal welfare.
It's just like like the way that we treat orangutans now or something like that. And so you'd just be like, it'd be, oh great, Bigfoot. I guess we could get him to push around the trolleys at Walmart. Like, that would be him. It wouldn't be like Harry and the Hendersons. It would
if
be,
somebody caught one, and proved that they were real, then just everybody would turn up and start hunting all the Bigfoots, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
People would be selling bits of them as aphrodisiacs.
Yeah, exactly. So just like, if there's something that you're genuinely interested in, like, have nothing to do with it. Let him live his life. Or, yeah. But it's kind of like the perceived lack of, to try to make up for something that isn't missing, which is, for example, a relationship with the dead. I'm getting, married in September.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But when you've had members of your family that have passed at an event like that, one of the main conversations that you're going to be having is talking about them. People are going to be coming up to me like, oh, they would have loved it. They would have been, and they'll be discussed in that, like, in this reverie way, more than anyone that's there or anyone that's living. You know what I mean? Like, if, your uncle's missing it for whatever reason, they won't be like, oh, they'll just be like, oh, it would be, it's sad that he's not here.
But, I see. But if he was dead,
it would be like, oh, he would have loved this, he would have been
So when you talk about, like, Jung and the idea of answering your own dead, is your own dead what's present there when people are telling you exactly what your nana would have thought at your wedding?
I don't think so, because I think, like, it's kind of like the idea of, like, who are your ancestors? And your ancestors can be, like, your actual ancestors to some extent, but it's also, like, your metaphorical ancestors, your psychics, things like that. So, I'm not from here. I'm from Scotland, and I live in the suburbs of Dublin, and I live in, like, the Wicklow Hills are right there. But to some extent, my ancestors are the people that have lived here, and are still, there's emanations of them that are still around. So is this like a transpersonal metaphysical woo-woo thing, or is it a cultural, psychological thing? They're the same thing. Yeah. They're exactly the same thing. And so, it's like, as another example, you can have a relationship with someone instead that you've never met, and no one that could have met. So I did a show about James Connolly a couple of years ago, and just as a brief history lesson, James Connolly was from Edinburgh, and he moved to Dublin, so I have that kind of connection. He's not from the same part of Edinburgh that I'm from, but kind of like similar areas. Like, we don't look too dissimilar. Like, we're as bald as each other were and stuff. And he's always been, like, kind of, someone that I was very enamored with. Shares the same politics with me. Like, was kind of like a fuck up in the same way that I am. And he joined the 1916 rebellion, which is what, is stepping stone to Ireland getting its independence. And when he died, like, people tried to claim his legacy very, very quickly. It was very much like a snatching it. And he was, like, very much this sort of, like, socialist. Like, he hated anarchists, but as he was getting older, he was definitely, like, working his way that way, even though he didn't fully comprehend it. But that was definitely the direction he seemed to be going in. And I just, like, got this idea for the show about, like, what happens if James Connolly was, like, a comedian? Like, what happens if he was, like, this vaudeville comedian? And circumstances happened where I was getting to put it on, and I got like a trip together, and we're making it, and it was just singularly like the only thing in my life. Like, and I was reading about James Connelly all the time, like reading his letters, reading his history books about him. I went into this like very, like I lost myself. And the James Connelly, it's like the method acting thing. That's where I was, and like I was having this like really intense relationship with this person that I had met. He's only got like one surviving relative, which is like a great granddaughter or something like that. I was going to talk to her about this and things but it was like this real compulsion, and it was really pushing me forward. And it was like I was being pushed in this direction to bring something forward that hadn't been brought forward before. And it was like, he was like, this, I need this aspect of me to be put out into the world. And that's just what I want. And you're the only person that's like, can appropriately do it because the circumstances are correct. And then. Like,
so it was unfinished business.
Yeah. But it was like, I never saw him. I didn't like wake up one day and James Connelly was going, woo.
Yeah.
All right, Paul, it's time to go. You got to do a show about me. Hey. It was just this like push, this inclination, this like, like subconscious thing. And before I even did the show, like sort of like the night of like the last dress rehearsal, that was it. It was done. Like I could just, it was like, yeah, it was like, this thing had been birthed. They'd been put out into the world. And that's it. That's what needed to be done. And it was like doing the 3 shows was an afterthought. I was like, because it was there. And that was it. Everyone was like, but it was like, oh, do you want to go on and do this? Like tour it and things like that. I was like, no, it's done. Yeah. Like I've done what this, like what it was is being brought into the world, and it doesn't matter if anyone sees it, which would, only, 200, 300 people saw it or something like that. Because but that, more than a lot of stuff I've done that people have seen. And then that was it. It was done, So,
do you know what it was? The specific unfinished business, like from a emotional, psychological, psychic point of view? It was
just that he was a funny guy, you know what I mean? And he had a sense of humor, and he like had a certain like way about him that is just, it just isn't the way that he's depicted at all. It's very like humorless, like lefty, like it's sort of more shown as like sort of Big Jim, with the hand, and it's very angry and things like that. And he was that as well. But he was also a sort of guy that would lose his shoes and then paint his feet to make it look like he had shoes. And I was like, that's him. That's James Connelly as well. You know what I mean? As long as the guy that would like go out and kill to make Ireland independent, he was also that guy. He was like, he had a cobbler shop in Edinburgh, and he's the worst cobbler. You could not cobble shoes for anything, but people would just go to him because they felt sorry for him. It's just like the way that's just never sort of brought out to him when it's like, if you saw like, if the, like an RTE does a show about James Connelly and things like that, it'd be very stern and be like, this is what, it's the way it is and things like that. So, but that's like, you can, I didn't need psychic abilities. I didn't need, the accoutrements of these things. That was something that happened because I opened myself up to it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, so you could argue that it was like a psychic happening on some level. But I suppose if you don't believe in that sort of stuff, you could also look at it as not, if that helps you sleep at night.
Yeah.
Have you heard this thing of authors writing fiction? Their characters come to life and they start like having conversations with each other independently, and the author's there just like trying to write it down. It seems a bit like that.
Yeah.
Or that it could be, a part of it is.
But that's kind of the thing, like what's more real? That or this conversation now.
Yeah. Well, I'm just imagining you.
Yeah.
I think I need to have a chat with myself, honestly.
Yeah. Just imagine
this drunk Scottish guy
that lives in Dublin. Fuck shit, the ghost all day. But it was like, Tommy Kelly, of Adventures in Wee Wee Fame, they were both classes. He's kind of got like a good point. It's like, who's more real, you or Spider-Man? Spider-Man. Because think about how many things that Spider-Man has done. Like the amount of money that Spider-Man generates. People have fallen in love and had children because of Spider-Man. Like multiple, hundreds possibly.
Is that a fetish thing or just
yeah, exactly. But how many people have you influenced? You know, a handful, 20, 30. Like, you know, you've got how many kids? You got
is impact like the measure of reality? Because, you know, if we're saying like, oh, you know, I'm not real because I didn't influence lots of people, but what are you having an influence on? Because none of those people are real either. So it seems.
But it's the people are real. The experience is simulated would be the kind of way that I would frame it, because like the sort of the Gnostic way to think about it is that you're here in an illusion to do something. And so it doesn't mean that the other people are also not real. It's not completely simulated. You're just within the illusion because, sorry, excuse me, you and or some of you or whatever there's things that you've got to come in to do for yourself, effectively.
Yeah.
To come in and do it, and then go back, and then do it all again. There's something that there's only certain things that you can do here that you can't do, and you know, the other world, or the underworld, whatever you want to call it. And that's the other thing that I've kind of like picked up from the dead. And then this is like how I would kind of frame the difference between like the ghost, who you kind of don't want an interaction with, or you do because you want to help them, and the dead. They're kind of two different things, because the dead only want to give you good news, effectively, which is like, oh, it's great, by the way. This is all sorted. Like, what you're doing now is great, and you just need to do this, that, and the other, and then you're going to be here. It's going to be fine to be nosy, or you know, something like that. Where what I don't understand about ghost hunters and the kind of way that they do it, which is salacious, and the fact that they might do an episode where it would be at the house and it would all be about a ghost that hung themselves or something like that, and they're like, right, so she hung herself in this room, and so we want to conjure her and we want to make entertainment out of it. So either you believe in ghosts or you don't believe in ghosts. So what you're saying as a ghost hunter is you believe that this woman has hung herself and her ghost hangs on, and you want to make entertainment about it.
That was a terrible choice of words.
Yeah. See, that's the subconscious making jokes for me now. It's the old arm getting back in. But yeah, like, you know, they're hanging around. Haha. And so, but what do you think is happening? Like, so you just think that it's okay to make entertainment about someone that has done, like, they've been in so much pain that they've done this thing that's like horrible, like, and now that they're dead, they're in this huge amount of pain and they're stuck and they're in this, but for you, it's entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, that is horrific if you conflate the ghost with the dead. But are you saying you wouldn't do that? But do you,
not necessarily.
I don't think we can really generalize about like whether ghost hunters do that or not, right?
Well, some of them definitely do.
I don't know any ghost hunters. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But
that's what you'll see in the shows, though. Like, this is the ghost of like many. I'm going to say many more. There's all from Harry Potter or something like that. But you know, it'd be like, you know, this is the ghost of this person, and like, let's see if we can get them to turn up. And then they hear a knock and they go, ah, and then run out of the room. And so it's like, what I've kind of like noticed is like looking through YouTube, and it's all just like people that are doing things like, I tried out ghost hunting and saw a real ghost, and it's like the, you know, like thumbnail.
Do you know if you put a face going on your thumbnail, that gets you the most clicks.
Oh man, it does. It clearly
Because it's
does
like an
for me.
emotional reaction.
Yeah,
Wait, hang on,
yeah.
let me do it. Let's both do it now, right? We'll just go. And then I'm going to use that as the thumbnail, right?
See,
And everybody will come and listen to
yeah.
this.
Exactly. Well, this is what like the thing is, like, you know, when you're watching like occult videos and stuff, like some of them still do that, but it's obviously just like they're reviewing like books, and so they've got like a picture, they've got like a stack of books, and they're going,
yeah.
It's like, why are you surprised about all these books, dude? You bought them.
Yeah. You won't believe what Abramelin.
Yeah, exactly. That could just be like a
Demiurge hates this one simple trick.
Gain enlightenment with this one weird trick.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like, in their worldview, like, they completely believe that these are the spirits of the dead. Some of them anyway. These are the spirits of the dead that are in great pain, and what you should do is just make entertainment out of that. They don't help them. They don't try and help them move on or like resolve what their problem is. It's just like stick it in.
It's a totally different framing, isn't it?
Yeah.
How is it? I mean, in my quite limited experience of dealing with things that you'd call ghosts that people would experience spontaneously, right? Where people are going about their business and start having weird experiences. I've gone and ghostbusted it, for want of a better word. And it's not been a being. It's not been like a person. The dead, as you say, are somewhere else, or at least not there. What it's been is like an emotional echo, kind of like if somebody, especially traumatic deaths, they kind of leave a residual smell or a bit of trauma around. That's kind of like a thought form. It's like, you know, when the smoking ban came in and all the pubs still smelled of cigarette smoke for quite a while. It's kind of like this. So I don't feel like there's some great crime being committed by people treating that phenomena as entertainment, because in my experience, that phenomena is not capable of suffering. It is a record or an echo of suffering. And I suppose it's like people like to go on tours around dungeons and look at all the horrible ways people were tortured and stuff for entertainment, which I've never quite understood why. That's a fun day out with the kids. Yeah. You know, that seems pretty fucked up.
I mean, people spend hours and hours on Twitter, which is, you know, just as bad as getting stuck in Iron Maiden. So it's obviously, we just as humans, we love to be tortured. No one can torture us better than ourselves. So
yeah, it's not unethical to make entertainment out of the echo or the image of suffering, in terms of, you're not like causing additional suffering to that dead person, right? So, I mean, yeah.
Maybe
that's like a healthy way. Maybe that's the only way that people could approach it, you know, because maybe some things are so horrifying that, you know, you can't approach the suffering. You can't just open the whole thing up and stick your head in it and experience it. You've got to have like a sanitized, look through a little peephole version of it. And maybe people running around haunted houses or doing ghost tours around the dungeon is a way for people to kind of inch their way closer to empathizing with that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, like, because I wouldn't, you know, begrudge people making a living and things, but I think a fair criticism would people turn around and be like, well, what's the difference between you and a ghost hunter, though? Because you were doing the ghost tours. So you were making a living out of talking about these ghosts, you know what I mean?
What is the difference?
You were, you know, literally scaring the shit out of people. And
you're better at it than the ghosts, for one thing.
And to that, I would say, shut up. I don't have an answer. You're not my boss. I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it's like your job as a tourist in Edinburgh is to lie to tourists as much as possible and see how much you can get away with it. And that's everything. That's just everyone has to Edinburgh do it. So that's our culture. So don't take it away from us. So was there anything sort of there that you kind of want to like pick up on in terms of like experiences of ghosts, or like the difference between ghosts and the dead per se?
I wouldn't want to commit myself on the nature of the dead, because then we get into what happens after we die.
Yeah.
Is this right or is that right? Is my Uncle Frank okay? And the answer is maybe.
Yeah.
It's a difficult thing to talk about, because again, our experience as a living of it is subjective, right? And it's hard to separate out. And you have things like mediumships where people go talk into the dead, and the dead person will say, yeah, if you go to my back garden and walk like 8 paces down and to the left and dig, you'll find the gold. And then you go and it's there, and it's like, holy shit, that was really cool information. But you still can't say it was really them. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe
exactly.
it's like the Akashic records, or it's like it's all a big database.
Yeah.
And that mediumistic experience is just like typing something into Google, and you're not really talking to them. Maybe you are, but like we can't differentiate those two, right? We just don't know what is happening.
Are you suggesting that the other world is just like a big Siri?
No, maybe like the mediumistic experience could be like that, where you're cramming, just like we might cram paranormal experiences or phenomena into a particular framework. If you're going to talk to the dead and expect to experience them directly, then maybe that's where the universe or the information in the universe is going to come meet you and be like, well, okay, you can have that experience. And that's how you can, that's like the screen that you create for the information to be projected upon. And I say this because of my experience with doing remote viewing, where we've experimented with kind of making stuff up. So if we come across something that is a really difficult concept to understand, I will sometimes say to it, will you just become a person, an imaginary person, and explain yourself to me in English? And it will. So it's like constructing an arbitrary frame to explore information of some kind through, and it works. And, I don't say then, oh yeah, there was a person there, because I know I made it up, right? But it will have an appearance. But it doesn't mean it's real. And it will give me valid information that is later proven to be correct. But the person's not there. It's a figment of my imagination, right?
Yeah.
So while I think a lot of mediumship experiences are really convincing, and I'm not arguing against the idea that we are really talking to the dead, or can be then, like, I don't think we can prove it. I don't think we can say what's going on. So it's kind of, I would say, I think that the dead and the ghost phenomena are like totally separate things.
I think this is like part of the problem that I'm trying to drive at as well. And again, it's bringing it to the sort of like the Gnostic viewpoint, where like the entire ghost hunting phenomenon is trying to prove something that I think can only be understood from an internal Gnostic standpoint, as in it's like something that it's like the difference between like understanding something and knowing something, where it's like you can understand something and it makes complete sense to you, but knowing it is completely different, where it's like that intuitive, it's like that, like as what we would say is gnosis.
Unlearned knowledge and like non-linguistic grasp of stuff at a low level.
Exactly. And I think it's just like, it is just trying to like get that internal thing external. And it's never going to work. It's never going to fit into that, because you're going to push up against the barriers of the material world, which is, it's got rules that you just can't break. And you can push them, you can nudge them and things like that, but you're never going to just like...
It's such a cliche, isn't it? That like, oh, all the answers you seek, you'll find them inside, not outside. It's actually fucking true. But when you haven't started finding those answers and pulling at that thread, and you hear people say that, it is the most useless advice ever. Because you sort of turn inwards and look and go, no, they're not.
Yeah. But that's like...
Well, you're looking wrong. You're looking wrong.
But say, like, I think that's like, what Jung is so important, and it is... It's got this kind of weird thing. He's getting a bit of a resurgence because, like, Jordan Peterson, who's completely misunderstood his work, and it's like it's really big in the far right now. But it's obviously like it's having a big resurgence in the woo community as well. And it's
Has Jung ever gone away for like the patron shrink of magicians? Like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Jung,
Yeah.
I love the idea that Jung was like a mystic pretending to be a psychiatrist.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very convincing argument. Like the way it does get framed, especially the black books and red books have come out and stuff. But
he just didn't want people to think he was nuts because he knew they'd stop listening to him. Right?
Yeah,
fair enough.
Which they did anyway. So
yeah, because they didn't like it.
Yeah, but yeah, the way that he would kind of frame that is, say, like something like Yoda as an archetype, and so like Yoda's right. Like once you get into this stuff, like you suddenly go like, oh my God, Yoda actually makes a lot of sense as a character. And it's got like a lot of wisdom on it. But you could conceivably not get it unless you go down this path view, because it is just so stupid. Like, and then you find yourself...
Yeah, it only makes sense looking back. It's not a useful map to actually get there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just you can look back and go, no way. People who are watching ghost hunting shows who are pretty much in the Western paradigm, the materialist paradigm, how do we move towards a healthy relationship with the dead?
Yeah. But that's what, I think this is like, why was the indication I was going to like push to start going this way and stuff, is to kind of give like voice to those echoes that are not really, getting out there in certain tractions. It's that's what I'm saying. It's like you can, that's always there for you. Like if you have someone that has passed away, your relationship with them will continue to develop no matter how long they've been gone for, and they're never going to be far away, and the unreal, which is more important than this sort of like illusory thing that we're going through. Like like let's say, for example, you're someone that, like, you lost your dad when you were young, and then you do remember where you start having kids of your own and stuff. Like, you will get a different understanding of your dad from being a dad. Mm-hmm. And that's just as real as it was when your dad was around.
Like
and
more
stuff.
About the journey of personal development.
Yeah, it's about the friends that we made along
it is
the way.
about ghosts and
But I think that's what ghost hunters are trying to do. Is they're trying to get that proof that the dead exist. And they're trying to reach for something. But the harder you reach for
that drives all of us, though, is that kind of divine urge to seek out the divine.
Yeah,
and it kind of goes weird, meandering ways.
But you don't need to be a psychic. You don't need an EMR reader. You don't need to go out into a spooky house or the forest and things like that. It's always going to be there for you, and you have to develop that. And and it's going to be part of your journey. It's going to be there for you, and so like. If it's obviously, I don't want to say don't do it, because if that's something you want to do, you should be going to do it, and you might. Oh, here comes Dave now.
Holy shit! We've successfully summoned Dave.
Hey, the closing remarks.
Awesome. Well, we were trying to summarize, but now you're here. We can do some fun ghost stories. Let's just wrap up where we were, because we were just talking about like the ongoing personal relationship that we have with the dead. Being more important than ghost hunting and trying to find the dead out there, but to find the dead inside instead. We were being grown up and productive and sensible about this instead of telling spooky ghost stories. So, Dave, you've been haunted.
I've been very haunted. Yeah. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think last year. I was teaching Dave remote viewing, and I went away for like a nice, relaxing, long weekend, and I came back, and you were haunted. and there's a whole story about, tell us how you ended up getting haunted, because I think it'll link back into some of the stuff me and James have been talking about.
There was a house nearby me that was quite a bit larger than the one that I'm in now. And they had an open house. So I was like, I'll go check it out. And being everything that we're doing, raising our awareness of energies around us and stuff, I'm like, there's some weird stuff going on in this house. So we leave, and then I'm feeling like there's something in my proprioceptive space. So I just ping you on Discord, and I'm like, hey, can you see what's in my proprioceptive space? Like, do you see anything going on with me? And you're like, what is that? And I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. That's really there. That's there.
But there was a sad tale about the house, wasn't there? Like, was it a suicide, or like there really was somebody who died in tragic circumstances kind of recently?
There were some bad emotions in the house for sure, and there were a lot of circumstances around that you kind of find and discover afterwards. And then my friend Jeff also went to that open house, and he's also sensitive. A real life buddy who you know.
I love the stories about Jeff, man. Like, Jeff is a whole genre. Jeff, if you're listening, I love you, man.
Jeff and I have opposite ways of approaching this stuff. Like, I hear a bump in the night and I go instantly towards it. And I'm like, what was that? This sounds fun. And Jeff's the opposite. Like, oh no, I'm haunted. So I think he creeped out Jeff a lot more than me. And I was much more like, oh, this is a cool learning opportunity.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this earlier. Like, you know, the thumbnails for the YouTube ghost hunting videos where people are like that. So we made a thumbnail by both pulling that face. So everybody's going to watch this video now. But what I was asking, like, what are people actually scared of? Like, when was the last time you heard of somebody getting killed by a ghost? Like, why do we squeal and run away? Serious question. I don't know. Because it is kind of unsettling, isn't it? But like, why are we conditioned to think that we need to run away? How do you even run away from a ghost anyway? Like, surely it's just going to come with you.
It's there. You can't run away from it.
But I mean, the ghost is kind of like an encounter with the uncanny. And that's kind of like what the fear is it's something that is there but not alive. And so it's kind of like meeting a waxworker yourself. So I guess that's kind of like where the fear element comes from. And there definitely is like some folklore about dying from seeing ghosts and stuff. But then the thing that I've always thought about that is like, how do you know? How was that? Like, we'll just be like,
did you see the ghost? What did it do?
He died from seeing the ghost. It was like, but if he died from seeing the ghost and no one was there, how did did he tell this story?
No, he died of seeing the ghost. I'm getting the inheritance, and that's that.
So that was the problem I had with like Lovecraft. Is like every story ends where it's just like, and then it's coming up, and it's like, why are you still writing? It's your eternal demises. Like, I just got to finish the sentence.
Yeah.
Just hold on. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, the manuscript was found in the spooky house.
Yeah.
Years later.
I think the fear of ghosts might go back to it's being confronted with your own mortality. So we don't know what it is. There's all these stories that it's dead people. And then here you're being confronted with the fact that you may be a ghost. And that's can be scary.
Yeah. Or not even mortality, but maybe like reality. Because we have these models of like what's real and what's not. We were talking earlier about how ghost hunters are kind of wanting ghosts to be a particular thing, and that maybe it's not really fair on the phenomenon to expect it to tap out like Morse code on your iPhone. You know, maybe it just wants to do its own thing, right? And it's kind of like Randy's prize, where he's like, well, I want perfect psychic functioning with this crazy statistical power, otherwise the whole thing is fake. And like ghosts are kind of the opposite of that, because they can like challenge your boxes that you want to put reality in. When the cat starts like levitating across the room, and you're like, well, is that a ghost? I don't even know what that is. Is my cat haunted? Is it my house? And it's like now you're in uncharted waters. You're not safe anymore because you don't know what's, you know, like we have models about how the world works and how we interact with it, and then when we see stuff that doesn't fit the models, it's like, now I'm totally out of control. What if this thing kills me? I don't know, maybe it can, because it's just unknown. It's like going into a spooky dark cave You don't know if there's a bear in there, so you just don't go in just to be on the safe side. Oh, apart from you, Dave, you do go in, right?
I love going in. Yeah. Send me in. Tag me in, coach.
Yeah.
I guess there's something as well, though, about being haunted by the living, which you do see more than you think. Because, I mean, Dave, you might not have this so much, but say, like in the UK and Ireland, you would get somewhere that's like this old fella's pub, and there'll be like this old guy, and he sits in one stool, and that's where he always goes, and he always sits there, and that's his stool. And then the pub will change, like someone will buy it, and it'll become something else, like a trendy wine bar or whatever, and he's still there. And it's like everyone he knows is gone. Like the pub's completely different, but this is his spot, and he's there. And it's like he's haunted. He's haunting that bar still. He's still there. And you'll see just this weird things where it'll be like old man pub, and then like trendy gay pub or something like that. And this guy's here, and he's not gay or anything like that, but that's his pub, that's his spot. What he's going to do there until he dies. And everyone loves him. They're just like, oh yeah, old Jim.
Yeah. It's just like having a pub cat. Or a pub dog, isn't it? It's just sort of like affectionate, sentient furniture.
Yeah.
It's that kind of bloody-mindedness as well. Like, I'm not leaving, I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
You know, that is going to result in that same guy haunting the place after he's dead as well.
Yeah. But that's it. This is the haunting. This is exactly what haunting is.
Yeah. An inexplicable presence, isn't it? What
strange?
Like
what
is he doing in the wine bar? He doesn't even like wine.
Jeff, why are you here right now?
Yeah. An eerie presence, strange smells, like a sense of danger. But I guess one of the other things as well is that you kind of already know that you're dead, and it's very clear. Like if you spend any time, it's one of those things that kind of like confronts you. Is it some way that maybe is it like ghosts are kind of the opposite of that, where they're living because they're doing something. Like they have some sort of anima about them.
They never know that they're dead.
Yeah,
which always strikes me as like a really good argument for them not being people, because you would notice, right? It's been 200 years. I still haven't peed yet. The cornflakes are just going straight. Like, you would notice, right, if you were sentient, that you were dead.
Yeah.
Surely.
Yeah,
and ghosts never do.
Well, here's another thing. Why do ghosts also have clothes?
Do they?
Well, how many naked ghosts have you heard about?
I don't, maybe people want to keep those elves.
Stupid, sexy ghosts. But yeah, no, like, so,
Dave, has Jeff got any sexy ghosts? Have you ever met one?
Not sexy ghosts, but are we talking about only ghosts in the form of like ectoplasm? They're actually visually there, because there's the concept that spirits are around you, such as when I was quote unquote haunted that you picked up on. We didn't see anything. That was just something that if you close your eyes and you're aware of your perceptions, you can feel it in your space. And I feel like that's much more common than, actually seeing something there.
Yeah.
But we're talking about in terms of like full apparitions, or, when someone says they see something.
Yeah.
Like, to my knowledge, I've never heard of a naked ghost. So what happens is like the double like goes with them to the other world. Like that they're wearing, or the khaki pants that they have on, like also die, and also. So I think there's a simple answer to this, which is why are ghosts not naked? Because it'd be inappropriate if they were naked.
Nope. It turns out there's a naked one in the French Quarter in New Orleans.
Well,
Yeah, New Orleans, maybe it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If they're in no territory, then that doesn't count.
Yeah. I want to read this story now. What's the naked ghost doing? if you were a ghost hunter and you were making a ghost hunting show and you got a full apparition of a naked ghost, then you'd have to like put the pixelate it, even though it's not real. Like no ghost movies before 9 p.m.
You get demonetized on YouTube. Like,
yeah.
There's someone here that's got footage of an actual ghost and they can prove it, but because they're naked, they don't want to lose the YouTube monetization. And so they're like, that's it. I'm not going to prove it.
Ghosts should do that, shouldn't they? They should all show up naked, and then nobody will ever see the video of them. It's just an urban myth.
It's good only ghosts.
Only ghosts. I think the ghosts that get up to that sort of stuff are a whole different topic, aren't they? Maybe we can do that another week.
Welcome to the sexy ghost show.
Out the Ouija board.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, here's like, in terms of saying, like, ghost hunting and things like that, is from a magical standpoint, what they have is really bad, like magical hygiene, where they kind of just like set things up and like just invite anything in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, no, they invite anything in, then they go and get themselves really scared and vulnerable psychologically in a haunted place.
Yeah.
And then stay there all night. It's hard to imagine how you would have worse psychic hygiene than that, really.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, there's something to be said for the fucking around and finding out method. I approve of it as things go.
Oh, yeah.
Things and seem to
it's the best way to... Dave and I both agree with you there. Yeah. Like, neither of us have ever been willing to learn from anybody else's mistakes.
Nope. I make all my own mistakes.
Yeah. This is so much more educational than just taking the advice of people who've walked that path before you.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's just like, do they not pick this? That's what I'm thinking is like, did they not pick up these
I don't think they do, because they're
stuff?
coming at it from presumably a materialist perspective.
Yeah.
Where, this kind of thinking about psychic hygiene and stuff is just like on a completely separate planet to, I'm going to detect the dead with a thermometer.
Yeah.
Because you're not, are you? So, in the situation where you're a ghost hunter, maybe you're a materialist, you're in a haunted house, and some real shit kicks off, and you're not screaming for the cameras anymore. There's apparitions, naked or otherwise, all sorts of weird stuff happening. Dave, you've been haunted. How would you recommend somebody who's like that person I've just described? What can they do to stop themselves completely losing it, getting possessed, carrying this thing around for weeks? Like, what one simple tip do ghosts hate?
I don't have one. I've never been afraid of ghosts because, like, my origin story is related to ghosts. I lived in a haunted dorm room for a couple months, and I was completely oblivious to it till I had a religious roommate come into the room and was like, "Oh, like this place is haunted," and I'm like, "Really? Those things that are like happening and flying around and doors opening, that's ghosts?" So for the longest time, the wind, all these different things, and you go down the list and you're just like, it can't possibly be. So the fear never really hit me. And then I don't know if there's any way to like have it not happen to you. But as I read more into the magical side of things and stuff, the more that you open yourself up, the more you become a magnet for it. So for Jeff, for instance, Jeff's a magnet for this activity. We can go walk down the street somewhere and it'll come and show up. And I know some of the people that we've read and looked into, they say that that's exactly what's going to happen to you. So I don't know, do a bunch of grounding and don't become spiritual, or accept it and just be like, oh, cool. Who are you? You were once a person, or you still are a person. Maybe you're just a thought form out there, but just have compassion.
So what happened in your haunted dorm room? Was it like, do you look back on it and go, how did I not realize that was a ghost?
Yeah.
Or was it really ridiculous?
Everybody that came over there thought that it was a ghost, except for me, because I was so deep in Richard Dawkins material that there was no selling me that it was a ghost.
So Richard Dawkins will keep you safe from ghosts?
Yeah. I mean, like they'll just keep showing up, and you'll be like, "That's not there." I'm James Randi, so
I think
I hope Richard doesn't watch this.
about Dawkins. Mr. Dawkins, I disappointed you.
He finds this, goes on a Twitter rant like, "This guy gave two." Unreal.
Yeah.
I think the way to think about it is that we used to have systems in place to deal with this. Like, you know, when you look back, you know, here, obviously, like the Celtic world, there's things that are, you know, still semi-going in Ireland and in Scotland and Wales and Cornwall and things like that. There is all this hygiene stuff, which is to appease these things, to stop it from happening, the ancestor worship, but it's kind of moved into a different thing. So it's like, you know, if I'm going to go to an Airbnb, you know, down at Wicklow or Tipperary or something like that, and it's going to be a new place, leave out a glass of whiskey. And then it'd be like, there you go, that's for you. Whatever might be around, if it be the she or be it the, and that's the offering, you know, like be it ghost, be it the she, be it, you know, a cooker or whatever is going to be.
When you get up in the morning and everything's fine, you put it in your coffee then.
Yeah. that's where the Irish coffee comes from, obviously. But yeah, that's, you know, like you tread softly, but have a big stick. And that's, you know, what you do. So
because you can still get an exorcism within like the mainstream Christian denominations. Like they don't advertise it, but even the Church of England has exorcists, which I only found out recently was like, really?
yeah, it doesn't sound right. I can't imagine
No, it
an
doesn't,
English
does it?
record,
But
you know? Like the Exorcist film would be very different
really
than an
surprised.
English.
I mean, obviously the Catholics have got them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty easy to get a Christian exorcism. But like you say, there isn't the hygiene. There isn't any understanding of like, let's avoid this problem preventatively. It's just like if shit gets so bad that you're not too embarrassed to ask for an exorcist and you're not also diagnosed with a mental illness, then we'll come and do an exorcism. So it's very inadequate and sucky, really, isn't it?
That intersects with
really. Oh, sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
that intersects with what you're talking about, where ghost hunting is trying to merge materialism into the spiritual world, where you're trying to look at something that is not material from a materialist lens. And it's kind of been that way since like the 1850s, right? Where everything now has to be related to science. At the turn of the century, or like 1900s, everything had to be related in some sort of universal mathematical law, where it's like, this is scientific fact.
Yeah,
and then we looked at
we're gonna find the energy and the waves and the ectoplasm and ectoplasm in a jar. And
there's groups that we won't mention or so, but everything is science. So you're not going to find it in science, and there isn't going to be like a Ghostbusters device, you know, that gets these ghosts to go away. Or maybe there is, and I'm just not aware of it. Well, like and subscribe, put in the comments.
It's holy water, mate.
I had a point there. It's completely popped out of my head. But yeah, it's materialism. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? We keep coming back to materialism, and like people trying to. I think you've summarized the whole episode by accident, Dave. That it is when you come at this weird, nebulous, subjective, woo-woo thing, and try and look at it through the materialist lens. It doesn't work very well, and you shouldn't do it.
Let's say,
unless you want to.
Even where it's like science can prove that something exists, like climate change or COVID or, you know, anything, pick your choice. And then most people are like, not for me, thanks.
Yeah.
So even if you did...
it's like people's personal truth, right? Isn't it? It's like, well, that's not how reality looks to me, so I don't care what you say.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So you could go and wrangle up a ghost, stick him in a box, get a Slimer, and like pop him in a trade show, and They would still, nothing would change.
Everybody be like,
yeah.
No, it's like that time that the Pentagon released those UFO videos and was like, guys, literally aliens. This is the evidence you've all been waiting for. Here's a video of UFOs. Everybody saw it. It was totally there. The pilots, everybody saw it. It's got to be aliens. And everyone was like, yeah, whatever. Cool. There was just like no reaction from it at all. This idea that people would panic when that kind of thing came out. And everyone's like, I don't care. Wasn't my boat.
The inverse of that, though, it's like, how many people do you know that have a story of like a crisis apparition or of some otherworldly thing happening? It's like almost everyone that you talk to, apart from a few people, like, when you're in a lock-in, the lights are low and you're a few drinks in, almost everyone has a story of the supernatural. I just never, but it's like in a hushed voice thing. It's kind of just like, oh, this is the thing that happened to me. But I don't think
I don't want you to think I'm crazy, part is because the stigma
like
on these things, nobody talks about it.
Heavily outweighs the people that have not had anything,
Yeah. Like visitation dreams. People are recently bereaved having like dreams of being visited by their loved one. And the dreams are like a really distinctive quality. It feels like the dead person is really there, and it's like multi-sensory. It's not like a normal dream at all. And like many people who experience this are convinced that person really was there. And this happens to like huge numbers of people. It's a really high proportion of people who've lost somebody really close to them will have a dream like this, and yet nobody talks about it. Like there are some kind of surveys in the psychological literature about how common this is. I can't remember the percentage, but it's like, it's huge. It's really, really normal for people to have these experiences. But as you say, you've got to get them pissed at a lock-in before they'll admit it.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's forbidden. Which is funny, because the ghost hunters are running around coming at this from a different angle that doesn't work, and we're allowed to talk about that because it's not real.
Yeah.
But as soon as it gets real, it's like, I don't talk about that stuff.
Yeah. Exactly.
Did you guys go over it not being real? The shows?
Well, I don't know, it might be real, but it's also, even if there's real ghosts and stuff, like the approach as kind of is not approaching the thing as it is, right? That ghosts are not inherently cold or hot, so people running around with thermal images and thermometers going, this is going to prove whether the ghost is here because there's a thermal anomaly. It's like, well, a ghost is not a thermal anomaly, right? So
yeah, I mean, it's like by the
whatever
very
it
logic, they defy physical conventions. Like, and that's always been the thing about ghosts, is that they don't follow the rules that are set. They can walk.
I think
through
all
or
paranormal experiences do this.
Yeah,
aliens do this. Bigfoot does this. It only shows up if you go fishing and you're not even remotely interested in aliens or Bigfoot. Then they'll show up. But like, you go out with a camera, not a chance.
Yeah.
Never in a million years are they going to turn up.
Apart from me, I've been a ghost the whole time.
Wow, you're a really good one.
I knew it. I knew it.
I died in this house, and this video call 10 years to this very day.
It's going to be so good for ratings.
It would be, wouldn't it? I've seen a thing, yeah, everybody would. Yeah, it was that podcast where that guy died. Oh, yeah, I heard of that one.
But he stuck around till the end. Kept talking.
Yeah. And they got the death certificate. The time of death was actually 2 hours before the podcast was recorded. Yeah. That's great. Well, I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of do as well. I got mixed feelings, actually, if I'm getting...
What is that? How sad would it be, though, that you've died and you just still turn up for a podcast? It's like...
If you didn't realise that you died.
It's like that meme about...
mate.
Remember with Bruce Willis in The Sixth Sense? It's like, yeah, no matter how bad your day is, remember this guy died and then still turned up for work.
Yeah. Right, we're like an hour and a half into this, so I think we're better wrap it up for realsies this time. Does anybody have any closing remarks? Funny anecdotes?
Yeah, not really. I think it's all been in a nice little package.
Yeah, I mean, we've
Yeah.
solved the whole mystery,
Yeah.
right? It's a case closed.
Yeah. Just have good hygiene. Give out your
Mm.
offerings. Do your ancestor worship. Get your guys on your side. Make sure that it's all going to be fine. And yeah, they're there for you. Like, don't go reaching for something that doesn't need to be reached for. It's all there.
That sounds really nice, actually.
My closing remark would be, if you said that the theme is materialism and moving away from that, I actually call, and I say this all the time, that the process of moving away from a materialistic worldview, like I had, reading every atheist book under the planet, I call it the process of seeing ghosts. Because I actually had to see ghosts for a very long time to finally realize it. And when you go into anything, spirituality, mysticism, whatever it be, they're like a sign from the divine. And like in the Bible, they talk about seeing signs and people who need signs and people that don't. That's probably what this is about, is like ghosts are a little bit of a sign. And if you see your ghosts, it's going to change you. And you're going to go down a different path than who you were, which is kind of cool. But at the same time, there's like a threshold point where you abandon the material worldview and you're like, I don't really need an EMF detector, right? Like, I don't need this sitting on my desk 24 hours a day. But it's a journey and a path that everybody goes on. So if there's ghost hunters that do that and everything, they're just on their path.
Just waiting to find that ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that as a model, because it applies to all the other paranormal experiences.
Everything.
Like people who see a flying saucer and then 10 years later they're writing books about the Virgin Mary, because it's just like kicked off this whole path.
And they're like, you need to see your UFOs or UAPs.
Yeah. Well, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, does it? It can be fairies down the bottom of the garden. It doesn't really matter. There's something that breaks your reality.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, we should, if we want that, we should go seek out reality-breaking experiences, but not using thermometers, like using our actual experience, isn't it? Cool. Right. Inward, exactly. All the answers are inside.
Inside you they are.
Thank you very much, James and Dave, for having this conversation with me tonight and for solving this mystery. So we'll see you next week. So goodbye.
Thanks.
Goodbye. Cheers.